I'm Erin Baker, and on behalf of the National Alumni Board, it is my pleasure as the president of the Trinity University Alumni Association to welcome you to the 2015 Alumni Awards Dinner. We're so pleased that you have joined us this evening to recognize our awardees: Lucia Street, class of 1959, the Spirit of Trinity awardee, and John Thornton, class of 1987, the Distinguished Alumnus. We all know that Trinity University provides a transformational education to talented students. Trinity prepares its students to be adaptive, successful adults through academic programs that cultivate both intellectual focus and civic engagement. It should be no surprise then that we recognize this evening two individuals who embody these very same characteristics. We are so very proud of Lucia and John as alumni of this institution and are gratified by the example that they set for the students of today. I now invite Reverend Rabin Judd to come to the podium to give the invocation. We will follow the invocation with dinner and then return to our program. Thank you.
Together, let us all pray. O God, this night especially do we offer our thanksgivings for John Bud Thornton and Lucia Street, friends indeed, and for all that makes them distinguished. For this happy occasion, for honors given to those for whom honors are due, for the Trinity we love, for our memories here, for teachers who changed our lives, for helping us grow up, for this food and drink, for this university's extraordinary future. O God, for the blessings that overflow, we do offer our thanks, and to God be praised. Amen.
Thank you all. In addition to the awards being presented this evening, I want to mention three other awards that also recognize alumni talent and contribution. First, the Outstanding Young Alumni Award is given to young alumni whose achievements in their professions or chosen fields, as well as service to their communities, set standards of excellence, worthy of recognition by the university and by the Alumni Association. The individual must have graduated within the past 15 years. This year's Outstanding Young Alumna is Rebecca Vitia, class of 2003. She was previously honored on campus in November at a luncheon. Secondly, the Healthcare Administration Alumni Association has been awarding the Leonard A. Deuce Award for Excellence in Healthcare Administration since 1976. This year's recipient, John Heer, class of 1985, former CEO of North Mississippi Health Services, will be honored at a dinner in March. Finally, the Fraternities and Sororities Committee of the National Alumni Board has awarded the inaugural Fraternity and Sorority Alumni Advisor of the Year Award to Jeannie Culver, class of 1982, who advised the Chi Beta Epsilon sorority for many years. She was honored last night at Trinity's Greek 201 program. The board is pleased to have initiated this award in recognition of the significant alumni mentorship to our fraternities and sororities. Now, tonight, we are proud to honor two outstanding alumni. The Distinguished Alumni Award honors achievement and service that is recognized at the highest level, nationally and internationally. The Spirit of Trinity Award is given to a loyal alumnus or alumna who embodies what it means to be a Trinitonian. The award recognizes excellence in service to the community or to the university. To introduce the honoree of the Spirit of Trinity Award, Ms. Lucia Street, it is my pleasure to call to the podium Larry Street.
Needless to say, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to introduce the 2015 Spirit of Trinity honoree. You know, in early September of 1955, the very first day that I was at Trinity, my parents and I were getting in line at Dr. and Ms. Laurie's home just around the corner, and my dad accidentally stepped on Lucia's foot. He immediately apologized. We introduced ourselves, and as they say, the rest is history. During Lucia's 4 years at Trinity, she was very active in many student activities, such as being a class officer, a student government officer, a member of Chi Beta, a member of Alpha Chi and Scoli, and her senior year was elected cheerleader. Along the way, she won several honors, and she graduated cum laude, majoring in religion. Almost 4 years to the day from the time we first met, we got married, and our 55-year journey began. Prior to the birth of our children, Lauren and Lyle, Lucia worked for a couple of Presbyterian churches as director of Christian education, one in San Antonio and one in Houston. And during the time, though, that the children were growing up, that's whenever she really became active in volunteer efforts and other community activities. She did various things like served as president of the Houston Junior Forum, which is a large women's service organization in Houston. And their primary projects at that time were owning a preschool and a senior citizens center. She was also elected as a trustee of the Fort Bend Independent School District, which is recognized as one of the outstanding school districts in Texas. Lucia's a people person. I can tell you, she knows probably more people than anybody I know. And it doesn't matter if we're walking down the street in San Francisco or having lunch in Kerrville, she'll say, "Now, I think I know that person." And the funny part is, she always does. In 1992, she became executive director of the literacy volunteer effort in Fort Bend County, which was basically just beginning and was operating out of a one-room classroom on a junior college campus. As the program grew rapidly, she directed the efforts to purchase a building for a literacy learning center in Sugar Land, and this building accommodates not only classrooms for the students, but a computer lab, a library, offices, and space for trainings of tutors. And this program is recognized today as one of the top nonprofit efforts in Fort Bend County and has served literally thousands of people. In addition to being the director of the Literacy Council, she's served as a member of the state and national board of literacy boards, and in 2003 she was named the Fort Bend County Woman of the Year in Executive Leadership and Fort Bend AAUW Educator of the Year. A few years ago, she retired from the Literacy Council, and as she will tell you herself, she flunked retirement. Her retirement lasted about 24 hours, and she was off in new directions, following her interest in education and volunteerism. She drew together a coalition of county leaders who are business leaders, educational leaders, and community leaders, and that effort today is known as Achieve Fort Bend County. The thrust of this effort is to help make headway in reducing the number of dropouts in all the Fort Bend School District schools, as well as providing opportunities for those without high school diplomas. About that time, she also became a member of the Trinity's National Alumni Board, and one of her major interests has been working with incoming students from the Houston Sugar Land area. In addition, the Houston Junior Forum that I mentioned earlier has redirected its efforts and decided that they could best serve the volunteer efforts in the Houston area with the grants program, and they asked Lucia to lead in the development and implementation of these grants, which in the past 4 years have become very effective and helped a number of nonprofit agencies with the partnership that they formed with the Junior Forum to help their various constituents. Lucia's also active on the Chamber of Commerce Education Committee. She served on the board of the Fort Bend Regional Council, which is a substance abuse prevention effort, and has worked as a volunteer with numerous other Fort Bend nonprofits. For all of her contributions and her efforts in Fort Bend County, she's received the Book of Golden Deeds Award from one of the largest service clubs in Fort Bend, the Sugarland Exchange Club. She's been named a Jewel of Fort Bend County, and the letters in the word Jewel stand for Joyous, Enthusiastic Women Enriching Lives, and was named as a Point of Light by Houston's Prime Living magazine. Lucia is also an elder in the Presbyterian Church and a Stephen minister. While Lucia is grateful for these recognitions and opportunities, I can tell you that one of the things that's really important to her is being able to walk into a restaurant and see the lady behind the cash register taking money and working in the restaurant, as well as perhaps seeing a driver of a forklift at Sam's who waves to her. And the reason this is important is because she knows that before they became a part of the literacy program, that they were one of over 3 million Texans who could not fill out a job application. There are many other success stories, student success stories, as a result of the work of the Literacy Council. Without a doubt, though, one of her most treasured possessions is a piece of pink construction paper that was part of an assignment by either one of our first or second grade grandchildren. I'm not sure just exactly how old they were, but it was to write about one's hero. And you open it up and it just simply says, "My grandmother is my hero because she helps people." And everything she's done, excuse me, and everything she's done, she's tried to make a difference, not only in people's lives, but in making the community a better place in which to live. She has dared to care. I'm very proud to present to you Lucia Dixon Street. Dr. Fisher, would you please join Lucia?
The citation on this award reads, "For her unwavering commitment to education for all ages, for making a dramatic difference in her community through sustained and proactive volunteerism, for her leadership of the Literacy Council of Fort Bend County, guiding it from a one-room operation to a fully accredited literacy center that is a nationally recognized model, for opening the doors to a better life for thousands of students, for service as a ruling elder and Stephen minister in her church, for the honor and credit she brings to her alma mater, and for personifying the spirit of Trinity University." Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Fisher. And Larry, thank you. I really should make him stand right here, because when you have been married as long as we have, you know whatever one does, it's a partnership. So I thank you. I really was better sitting down. Standing here looking out at all of you is really overwhelming. And I have to admit, a little intimidating, but I'm so very grateful for this opportunity. And we're so glad that so many of our family and friends have been able to join us. So if you'll give me just a personal minute here, I want to introduce our family to you. Our daughter, Lauren. Now you kids are going to have to stand up. Our daughter, Lauren, and her husband, Steve Zarvis. Our son, Lyle, and his wife, Liz. And their daughter, Olivia, who is a junior at Memorial High School in Houston. Thank you. Now, there are 4 more wonderful grandchildren, but you all probably know that getting 5 teenagers at the same place at the same time is nigh on to impossible. But I have to tell you quickly, Caroline, Liz and Lyle's oldest, is a freshman engineering major at SMU. And their younger daughter is a freshman at Memorial High and is involved in some sort of mandatory cheerleading something this evening. And our Lauren and Steve's daughter, Alexa, is a sophomore at Cinco Ranch High School in Katy, and she's on the varsity soccer team, and they're involved in a tournament. And their son, Zachary, is a freshman at Cinco, and he's on the varsity wrestling team, and they're doing whatever you do to win district right now. So they would be here if they could, and I wish you could meet them. We're also so grateful to members of the class of '59 who've joined us, and I see some Chi Betas and some very special longtime Trinity friends. We're so grateful for your presence, as well as some very close friends from Houston. We thank you for your efforts to be here. I want you to know that I know as well as you do that every single one of you who are alumni deserve to be standing here. And all I can do is thank those who made this opportunity possible for me. But the truth is, we're all in this together because we really are bonded together through the real spirit of Trinity. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about what that spirit means to me, because in my mind, it's what undergirds and surrounds all of the more visible and better known assets of our university. The stellar faculty and staff, the innovative curriculum, the fantastic facilities, including the new Center for Science and Innovation, outstanding athletic and extracurricular programs, and so much more. And of course, most of all, the outstanding students from all over the world and alumni leading meaningful lives. There's no doubt, as Aaron has already said, that Trinity provides a quality education. But I'm convinced it's that quality education enhanced by the spirit of service and the willingness to do one's part that is so desperately needed in this turbulent world today. One clear and succinct means to express that comes from President James Garfield, who said, "Next in importance to freedom and justice is education, without which neither freedom nor justice can be permanently maintained." The real spirit of Trinity continues on in those currently on campus, and I see some great looking. I wish I'd had an opportunity to meet you, and hope I do before the evening's over. And you could probably give better examples than this. But a couple of things that I'd like to show you how it is demonstrated. There was an underclassman who noticed that some of the maintenance workers did not speak English as well as they should. And so she started a program for speakers of other languages, even developing the curriculum herself. And the young lady who had the vision to work for the establishment of Hope Dorm so that the students who were committed to homelessness could serve and work and study together. And it's evident in the All-American seniors, All-American soccer senior, who asked her friends to celebrate her birthday by contributing random acts of kindness to equal her age, rather than to give her gifts. And as many of you probably do know, as a testament to the culture of service leadership on this campus, Trinity has been listed on the President's Higher Education Community Service Honor Roll for the last 5 years. In that time, over 1,600 students have given over 60,000 hours annually. And it doesn't stop with the students. The faculty and staff set the example by the way they live. I know it was true when we were on campus, and those of you who live in the area could probably give wonderful examples that I'm sorry I'm not privy to. But news does get to Sugar Land on occasion. And I was coming out of a large gathering, and a woman, I had no idea who she was, called to me and asked me to stop and wait for her. The reason, when she got there, what she said to me was that she knew I'd gone to Trinity and that I had met her grandson. Her grandson was a freshman baseball player and had to go home from, he became ill, and they decided it was better to hospitalize him in Sugar Land so he'd be close to his family. And what she wanted me to hear was that his baseball coach had called him every single day, and that his professors had also checked on him and assured him that they would work with him academically. She doesn't, or didn't, and I guess still doesn't speak softly. And so this traveled around, and you could see the look on some people's faces. So what it turned out to be a free PR opportunity for Trinity, totally unsolicited. But what this grandmother had witnessed was the spirit of Trinity in action. Because I know a number of you who are alumni, I know that you've continued to live that spirit of Trinity day in and day out, some in ways known only to you and those you serve. Due to having worked with adult learners for so many years, as has been mentioned, and they're dedicated tutors, I had the perfect opportunity to see how service rendered behind the scenes can change individual lives and thereby their families, and make a huge difference in the community as well. Maria was a beautiful mid-30s young woman who could not even write the alphabet when she came to the Literacy Council. So she was placed with our most patient tutor. Martha worked with Maria 2 times a week for what seemed like ages. And then all of a sudden one day, I heard this yelling coming down the hall, and she came bursting into my office, holding up a piece of paper saying, "I wrote my name. I wrote my name." As you can tell, I was so touched and grateful to be able to share that opportunity with Maria, because I had nothing to do with it, but I got to share in it because of what Martha had done, quietly, painstakingly, back in the corner. I know that maybe you think I'm trying to recruit literacy tutors, and it's not a bad idea, but that's really not the reason I'm telling you that story. It's because I know that each of you can relate something that you do to that particular story. And so here we are, back where we started, that we are all bound together by the Spirit of Trinity. And I think this is expressed so powerfully by former President George H.W. Bush, who says, "Any definition of a successful life must include service to others." So I thank you for your service on the Board of Trustees, on the National Alumni Board, and for all that you do in so many other ways within your own communities. And I certainly do thank you for this special opportunity. I'm very grateful.
Congratulations, Lucia. You truly are the spirit of Trinity. Now, to introduce our distinguished alumnus, John Thornton, I welcome Evan Smith.
Thank you very much, Erin, and to everybody here tonight, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm so glad to be here with my friend and business partner, John, somebody I admire enormously and have had the pleasure to know in two different contexts. I've known him professionally and I've known him personally. Knew him personally first. And in thinking about how to introduce John tonight, I thought whether I was going to introduce Resume John or Real John. And I thought you all probably have some sense of Resume John. You know that he's a very proud graduate of this university, went on to Stanford for business school, spent some time at McKinsey, and was really instrumental in building what is an extraordinarily significant company in Austin Ventures. And that, John's professional career, I think, widely known to many people. And I'm going to leave most of the aspects of Resume John out of this because while I think Resume John is impressive, I think Real John is actually even more impressive. And the thing about John, many of us are open books. John is not really much of an open book. To understand who John is, to know John, you really have to know John. And so let me say a few words from my perspective as somebody who's known John now for the better part of 2 decades, personally and professionally, why I think John is such a great person and such a worthy honoree tonight, and would frankly be a worthy honoree on just about any occasion I could imagine. The first thing to know about John, you know him as Bud. I know him as JT. In the latter part of his life, Bud maybe has morphed into JT, so I'm going to just call him JT. Think Bud when I say JT. The thing about JT is that he really is truly professionally accomplished. A lot of people talk about the extent to which Austin Ventures, which John has been so instrumental in getting to where it is today. People talk a lot about John's contribution and the significance of what John has done on the technology side of the world. I don't think it can be overstated, the extent to which John's been a major player in seeding early stage technology, largely software companies, helping them survive and thrive as an exceptionally astute investor, dedicated board member, and trusted advisor. Run into a lot of people in the technology world who revere John for the advice John's given, for the guidance John has given, and for helping them get to where they are. And so when people talk about the role that John has played in helping to build the technology community in Austin and in this country, I really don't believe people fully appreciate exactly what that means. And John's view of his contribution, I know, because I witnessed it firsthand, is that he's not there to hold the hand of somebody he's working with or alongside. John is unabashed in his belief that asking hard and occasionally uncomfortable questions in his capacity as a board member and as an advisor and as an investor is not only his right, but his responsibility. I have seen time and again John make people and make entities better through his dedication and through his willingness to say the thing that everybody is thinking, but very few people are willing to articulate. And that's something I think you need to understand and appreciate about John. JT is also smart. I'm not just talking about first in his class at Trinity smart, although he is that. I'm talking about smart in a less direct and less tangible way. John is an amazing judge, in my experience with him, of talent. He's a great predictor of behavior. He's a military caliber strategist and tactician, and nobody has a better bullshit detector than John. John is able to assess a situation so perfectly and so quickly, and it's maddening if you're the one on the receiving end of that assessment, as I have been for the better part of the last 5.5 years. He's not right all the time or every time, because nobody is, but he's certainly right the majority of the time. And while it can be frustrating and maddening, you have to give it to him. He's got a terrific barometer for what's right and what's good and what's not. JT is absolutely, in my experience, visionary. He sees things that the rest of us do not. He can see all the way to the core of a problem quicker or better than you or me. And that is something I think he's not necessarily as appreciated for as he should be, but it has gotten so many of us to where we are, his ability to quickly assess, diagnose, and cure many problems. JT is curious, charismatic, sometimes despite himself. He's forthright. He's civil when other people are not, and in situations in which he'd be forgiven for being incivil. He's decent, fundamentally decent. He's sophisticated, and he's persuasive. And I'll come back to his powers of persuasion in a second. JT both works hard and plays hard. We all know people who do one but not the other. And a full life requires both. And very few people I know play as hard and work as hard alongside one another as JT. JT is humble. He is humble. Part of the reason that a lot of people don't know him, I believe, is because of his innate humility. He has never forgotten that he's a kid from Kansas. He never forgot how he got here from there. And I think that's something fundamental to understanding who he is. JT is generous in my experience and loyal, sometimes to a fault. No better friend to a friend in need or to most anyone in need than JT. He's gotten better over the time I've known him at saying no to causes both good and lost. But he's not nearly good enough. He's poorer for it, and the rest of us are richer for it. And the thing about JT that I've come to know most especially in the last 5.5 years is that he is a consummate public citizen. Somebody who has absolutely no obligation to do the things he does, but having done well, he now wants to do good. And in fact, if I look back over his life and his career, he's always had the instinct to do good as well as to do well. I was the editor of Texas Monthly. I had a great job. I had no interest in leaving to go do this crazy thing called the Texas Tribune. And my friend John, JT, came to me and said, I've got this idea that serious journalism needs to be saved and that the for-profit media business is not in a position to save it. And I want to create a new model for doing serious journalism, and I want you to help. I thought he was nuts, but I thought his heart was big, and I thought his head was at least pointed in the right direction. It may not have worked, but I knew that he meant well, and I knew that he wanted this genuinely to work. And the thing about JT is if he comes to you and he asks you for your help, you line up behind him. You follow him into battle. I've seen it time and again. And I had done it before, but I was never happier or prouder to do it than with this. And over a period of 18 months, the original idea that John had for what became the Texas Tribune became something that really did come to life. He engaged me in those early conversations about it. He harangued me. He pestered me. He poked at me. He called me bad names, including on one memorable night in front of my wife. But eventually I agreed to jump into the abyss with him to help start what has become a very successful nonprofit news organization that we believe is doing the kind of good that John always imagined it would. At the beginning, without being asked to, John made the first and then ultimately the second large individual gift to the Tribune. And then, classic John, he said, "I'm turning off the tap, because the best thing for this organization will be for you all to figure out how to make it sustainable without me." And believe me, in weak moments, I've tried to get him to give us more, and he won't. True to his word. But in getting us launched and then forcing us to stand on our own 2 feet, John made us successful. And that I know John has done for so many businesses over time. Our success is his success. Or maybe better said, his success is our success. Whatever the case, Texas is better for it. He is, as of tonight, distinguished to you. He has been for several decades distinguished to me and to many people in Austin and elsewhere. He is an absolutely worthy honoree, and I'm thrilled to be here to say so. Please welcome John Thornton.
The citation on this award reads, "For applying his business acumen to the software industry with outstanding success, for his leadership in promoting entrepreneurship through his involvement with the Entrepreneurs Foundation of Central Texas, for helping grow Austin Ventures and assuming a prominent role among entrepreneurs in the new economy, for giving generously of his time and talent as a trustee of Trinity University, for helping sustain the cultural life of his community by co-chairing Ballet Austin's capital campaign, for founding Texas Tribune, the nation's largest statewide nonprofit news organization, and for the honor and distinction he brings to his alma mater." Congratulations.
Oh my. As humbling as Evan's introduction is, try having Lucia Street as your dinner partner if you really want to be humbled. Evan, go home. The time that you've given us today, and particularly me, it just, I can't thank you enough. In case you guys don't know, you are in the presence of a really great guy, Texas' leading public intellectual, a wonderful father, and all these things. But what he is more than anything else is a guy and a leader who puts the whole team on his back every single day and goes. Those are the kind of people I'd like to be around more. I just don't have very many of them in my life. And so thank you, and seriously get on the road, because I know you need to get home. I gotta admit, it is a kick to be so over-honored by your alma mater. This is one of the nicest things anybody's ever done for me. I'll steal a line that I heard recently. I tried to track down the source, but I couldn't find it. It was, "This is not the first time that I've been honored for something that I don't deserve, and I really hope it won't be the last." And while I doubt that the awards committee operates with explicit quotas, I also suspect that one of the ways they avoid any charges of intellectual snobbery or cultural elitism is just every once in a while you give this award to an actual Chi Delt, and it gives you a lot of wide berth. And so, fellas, I'm sorry, it's me, but somebody's got to take one for the team, and so here it is. I've got to tell this story. I was in this class today. Today was bid day on campus, which I had completely coincidental. So I'm speaking with this wonderful group of entrepreneurship students, 15 kids. We're going In walks this kid in a dirty baseball hat, faded pig pants, old cowboy boots. You know, he's 7 or 8 minutes late. And I think, if the Pope is Catholic, this kid is a Kydell. So he sits down, and then they go around and introduce themselves. As it turns out, he's a freshman, and I know he couldn't have pledged yet, so I thought, okay, got that one wrong. He's not a Kydell. Kid stands up 5 minutes before class is over and is going to leave. And I think, he walks over, extends his hand to me, and he says, "Sir, I'm sorry, I need to leave early. It's Kydell bid day." So I thought, well, I actually can call him, and some things never change. The list of past recipients on the program is intimidating. It really gives you a sense for the myriad ways in which Trinity serves its community and its society, people who have made their marks in business, government, education, politics, art, science, all manner of public service. And so it's with real humility that I take my place on that list. Beside it being bid day, it was just great fun spending time on campus today. I do have an alarming report, however, which is that in all my life, I don't think I've ever seen such a conspicuous, almost obnoxious display of youth. These kids are so young. And at the same time, they are so worldly and so self-assured. In other words, as different as they could possibly be, absent the young part, than how I remember my 18, 19, 20-year-old self. I certainly was not worldly. I was months away from my first plane trip. Much was exotic to me. Palm trees, breakfast tacos, girls from private schools. I mean, frightening creatures, those. And my first Trinity memory was actually coming around to the intramural field, and there are these guys running around with these really menacing-looking masks, and they're chasing each other with these web sticks. And I think, God almighty, that fraternity hazing stuff is real. There was not a lot of lacrosse played in the Wichita, Kansas of my childhood, and as it turns out, a lacrosse game had broken out. But I wasn't very self-assured either. The first time I got a test back, my first semester of freshman year, was a 72. Remember it clearly. I remember it clearly because I sat there frozen in a daze long enough that everybody else walked out, and the automatic sensor gizmo turned off the lights, and I was still there. And it snapped me back from the kind of dystopia that I had created for myself, where my scholarship got taken away and I was shipped back where I belonged, to Butler County Community College. As it turned out, I did fine here, but self-esteem was still a little wobbly when I left. And as Evan said, Raymond Judd said, I spent the first 22 years of my life as Bud Thornton, pretty much ignoring my given name. But when I got my first grown-up job after college, I decided Bud wasn't going to cut it. And so it was John Thornton who reported for duty that first day at McKinsey. And so I was shown in my office, tiny office, but it was 36 stories up in a skyscraper. And the coolest thing about it was it already had my name on the door. And it was there with my office mate. So it was Mike Mulcahy and John Thornton. A little foreign to me because I've been Bud, but felt okay. And then I looked over at the next office, and there were two names there too, and it was Skip Wagner and Joe Bob Perkins. And I thought, Aggies. That one I didn't see coming. And I felt terrible because I thought, oh my God, Skip and Joe Bob, are you kidding? Poor Bud. I mean, Bud busted his ass to get here, and you euthanized him and put him 36 stories down an elevator shaft. And now you're left with John, who is somewhere between a stranger and a fabrication, and his new bosses, Skip and Joe Bob. This just doesn't seem fair. And I've got to say, if there's one way that Trinity failed me, it's this. It's the abject lack of preparation for a very hard reality that our graduates need to face, which is that there are vast swaths of corporate America that are ruled over by ferociously intelligent, ruthlessly competitive Aggies who strut around grinning like the spawn of the devil himself and a young Jimmy Carter. I mean, these people are earnest and they are tough to compete with. But I digress. In the most Confucian sense, these are interesting times in our small colleges and universities. Many of the forces that are bearing down on these enterprises look familiar to Evan and me as observers of commercial media, technology, demographics, in some cases just wrong-headedness and inertia. And if you add to that a couple of decades of just crazy tuition increases, it's tough to swing a dead cat without hitting a really vehement critic of liberal education in America. Wesleyan University President Michael Roth writes that a sense of pessimism has crept into these institutions. And in fact, the assertion that a bunch of them will be out of business in the next 2 or 3 decades has taken on sort of the received wisdom trappings of a meme. Now, of course, when that happens, what it usually means is that we're about to enter an absolutely golden age of liberal education, and that we'll only know that in retrospect. But Roth also notes that most of the arguments both for and against the place of institutions like Trinity in our society are not very new and were really around in Thomas Jefferson's time. And I just think this is a fascinating and important debate. And tonight, my contribution to this fascinating and important debate is as follows. Whatever. I am in the mood to count my blessings, and I need a damn big abacus to do that. My association with Trinity has blessed me in 100 ways. I'd like to briefly talk about 3 tonight. 3 ways that Trinity blessed the naive, neurotic, budding adult formerly known as Bud. And I'll indulge me as I read to you a little bit in the process. The first is, and this really came home to me today, it was here that I was first introduced to the notion of being taken seriously as an adult by adults. Now, when I became a stepfather, I followed in the proud footsteps of millions of liberally educated colleagues who had gone before me into this important role, and I did what they do, which is I just panicked. And I bought a bunch of self-help books. And as it turns out, the people who write these self-help books agree on precisely 2 things. 1, it's very important to take children seriously. And 2, adults are really bad at taking children seriously. And that's particularly true of parents. When I showed it at Trinity, it was sort of reversed. I felt like I was almost being taken too seriously. The staggering resources, the history, the tradition, the physical beauty, and I all of a sudden realized this was all in service of me and a couple thousand other me's, but still pretty overwhelming. But also inspiring. When you're 18 and you're right out of the Wichita Public Schools and you take one look around this place, I mean, this place 30 years ago, today is just not even, it's hardly conceivable. But you get up close and personal with O'Neill Ford and with Barbara Hepworth and with Henry Moore, you think, this crew is not screwing around. And there's a lot expected of me. What was even more incomprehensible was this sudden appearance in my life of all these wickedly bright, concerned adults who were concerned not only about the development of my mind, but what was on it at any given moment. And I gotta tell you, it's just hard to imagine a more encouraging setup for a kid who was where I was. In Philip Roth's 1977 novel, The Professor of Desire, Professor David Kepish spends a good deal of his time thinking about sex, which is pretty much table stakes for a Roth protagonist. But he also thinks about Chekhov and about Kafka and about how to translate his enthusiasm for the great books to his students to whom he is devoted. And when it sunk in that I was going to be addressing you all tonight, this is the first passage I thought of, so indulge me. He said, I love teaching literature. I am rarely ever so contented as I am here with my pages of notes, my marked up texts, and with people like yourselves. To my mind, there is nothing quite like the classroom in all of life. Sometimes when we are in the midst of talking, when one of you, say, has pierced with a single phrase right to the heart of the book at hand, I want to cry out, dear friends, cherish this. Why? Because once you leave here, people rarely, if ever, are going to listen to you the way you talk and listen to one another and listen to me in this bright and barren room. Nor is it likely that you will easily find opportunities elsewhere to speak without embarrassment about what has mattered most to men as attuned to life struggles, as were Tolstoy and Mann and Flaubert, and then one of the great run-on sentences of the Roth canon. I doubt you know how very affecting it is to hear you speak thoughtfully and in all earnestness about solitude, illness, longing, loss, suffering, delusion, hope, passion, love, terror, corruption, calamity, and death. Moving because you are 19 and 20 years old, from comfortable middle-class homes, most of you, and without much debilitating experience in your dossiers yet. But also because, oddly and sadly, this may be the last occasion you'll ever have to reflect in any sustained and serious way on the unrelenting forces with which in time you will all contend, like it or not. Many of you who chose to take me seriously are here tonight, and I thank you. And to those of you so deeply involved in the endeavor of taking today's Trinity students seriously, I thank you too, and I think we all do. The second big thing Trinity did for me was to expose me to the notion of learning just for the sheer hell of it. This is from John Williams' 1965 novel Stoner. He read and studied and at last came to find some comfort, some pleasure, and a ghost of the former joy in that which he did, a learning toward no particular end. It was a successful seminar, one of the best classes Stoner had ever taught. Almost from the first, the implications of the subject caught the students, and they all had the sense of discovery that comes when one feels that the subject at hand lies at the center of a much larger subject, and when one feels intensely that the pursuit of that subject is likely to lead where one does not know. I'd like to say that discovering this notion of learning for learning's sake at Trinity had some immediate effect on my life's trajectory, but it didn't. I was in such an all-fired hurry to get to the next thing, and all I knew for sure about the next thing was that it involved commerce and money and not Wichita, Kansas. And so I was really kind of I was utterly blinkered to so much that Trinity had to offer. I call it my crime against the humanities. I did, and Dr. Butler will know, briefly consider pursuing a PhD in economics, but then one early morning I was out on a run in Alumnus Park, and I caught this tableau of this private airplane lifting off in the morning light. It's one of those images that 20 years later would launch 1,000 NetJet subscriptions, and I thought, I don't know what that guy does for a living, but I doubt he has a PhD in economics. Sorry, Dr. Butler, so much for my career in the academy. But in spite of myself, and almost exclusively because of my professors, there were seeds planted in the more restless kind of nether regions of my mind. I didn't indulge my intellectual curiosity here the way I should have, but I located it. I got a taste for how pleasurable it could be. I got exposure to enough great novelists and enough religion and enough philosophy and enough history of all kinds that I could return to those later on my own terms, at my own pace. And now few things bring me more pleasure than a sunny day, an empty calendar, and a stack of books that don't have anything to do with each other. It's been a bit of a rough bargain with commerce and with money, and it's taken a while to pay out, but it's not been a bad one, and I thank Trinity for that. And then the third big thing Trinity did was to provide me with the rudiments of how to actually think. This is, of course, the eternal insulting, hackneyed cliche of the liberal arts, but I don't mean it in its usual throwaway context. I mean it in the way that David Foster Wallace unfolded in his, now I gather somewhat famous, although new to me, 2005 Kenyon College commencement address. And I say rudimentary because this is the really hard stuff. This is not content, this is process, and it's the stuff that none of us at any age would really argue that we've mastered. And so I'm going to read a little bit from Wallace's text and then get off the stage, because I hope you'll agree with me that it won't stand any embellishment or commentary. He says, I'm going to posit to you that the liberal arts cliche turns out not to be insulting at all, because the really significant education and thinking that we're supposed to get in a place like this isn't really about the capacity to think, but rather the choice of what to think about. To be just a little less arrogant, to have some critical awareness about myself and my certainties, because a huge percentage of the stuff that I tend to be automatically certain of is, as it turns out, totally wrong and deluded. One example, everything in my own immediate experience supports my deep belief that I am the absolute center of the universe, the realest, most vivid and important person in existence. And escaping this way of thinking is not a matter of virtue. It's a matter of choosing to do the work of somehow getting free of my natural, hardwired default setting, which is to be deeply and literally self-centered, and to see and interpret everything through this lens of self. People who can adjust their natural default setting in this way are often described as well-adjusted, which I suggest to you is not an accidental term. As I'm sure you guys know by now, it is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your head. What you don't know yet are the stakes of that struggle. Learning how to think really means learning how to exercise some control over how and what you think. It means being conscious and aware enough to choose what you pay attention to, what you choose to construct meaning, how you choose to construct meaning from your experience. Because if you cannot or will not exercise this kind of choice in your adult life, you will be totally hosed. This, he continues, and then I'll end, I submit, is the freedom of real education, of learning how to be well-adjusted. You get to consciously decide what has meaning, what doesn't, which means yet another cliche is true. Your education really is the job of a lifetime, and it commences now. I am beyond grateful for this honor and for your attention, and I'm especially grateful to Trinity for giving me the opportunity, should I avail myself of it, to be not totally hosed. So, thank you very much.
Well, folks, it's people like John and Lucia who make me so proud to have a Trinity degree. Thank you. We're winding down here. Thank you for joining us tonight on this special occasion as we recognize two of our Alumni Association's finest. We are so proud of you, Lucia and John, and all that you represent as alumni of Trinity University. We are also blessed to have such a deep pool of alumni with the qualifications that make them worthy of consideration of these honors. I thank all of you who took the time to submit nominations this year, as well as the National Alumni Board Committee that had the tough choices in making this year's selections, and to commend them for the work well done. While the board ultimately chooses the honorees, we encourage everyone in the Trinity community to continue to provide us with nominations in the coming years and to bring to our attention the exceptional alumni of Trinity University. Congratulations again to Lucia and to John. Thank you all for your participation. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it. This concludes our program. Go well and good night.